I want to introduce now our special guest today also, Dr. Callahan. I'm sure the Callahan name is familiar to many of you around town. Dr. Callahan's son, Ken Callahan, is a common pleas judge. His brother, Nelson Callahan, wrote an incredible book, an extraordinary book about the history of the Irish here in Cleveland. So Dr. Ken Callahan has become an expert on the Civil War. And a few years ago, I was at his house and I was amazed at the Civil War collection of the memorabilia that he had. A lot of course, I'm sure many of you know the Irish participation in the Civil War, and Dr. Callahan is going to be talking today about the Hibernian Guards and their role in the Civil War. So I'd like to call Dr. Callahan.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all? Okay. Thanks, Jerry. It is true that when I was a younger man, I used to teach at John Carroll the course on the Civil War to the military history class. And the young people would say, why is this guy who's a surgeon so interested in the Civil War? And I would tell them because it is the defining moment of American history. It made America. But they don't ask that anymore now. They just figure, I know why he's in the Civil War, the son of a bitch is probably in it. So, what I want to tell you is, America was in 1861, as Mr. Lincoln had so adroitly pointed out, a house divided. We had become by that time two separate nations. The North is a sleeping industrial giant about to awaken and cross the threshold of the Industrial Revolution. They have 4/5 of all the railroads in the North, 3/4 of all the manufactories in the North, and most importantly, 3/4 of all the young men who are eligible for military service. So your question ought not to be, why did the North win the Civil War? Rather, why did it take so long? We'll touch on that. The South is laconic, agrarian, going back to Jeffersonian principles of large farms, small towns. They thought it would be a good idea to have money printed by the state capital. They just want to stay away, be as small and unproductive as possible, but have a nice life on a farm. They had the sort of economy in the South that would have not have produced the peacetime economy, much less a wartime economy. They had a lot of differences. The differences could have been solved in the ordinary give and take of American politics, except for slavery. Slavery is the sine qua non without which the war would not have been fought, which is not the same thing as saying the war was fought over slavery. That's a gross oversimplification. The war was fought over a Cold War that went on between North and South from maybe 1814 when New England wanted to secede from the Union up to 1861. It was bound to happen. It was just a terrible dislike, mistrust. But why I say it isn't on slavery, consider that only 1 out of every 16 soldiers in the Confederate Army owned slaves. Well, why did the other 15 fight? Surely not to defend slavery. They were competing against slavery. They fought for the same reasons that any of you who are veterans of combat know. They fight because somebody tells them to. You fight because you want to protect your friends. I don't think many soldiers fight, for example, in World War I, did they fight for make the world safe for democracy? I don't think so. And I don't think in the Civil War many soldiers fought for or against slavery. Mostly you fought to defend your fellow soldiers. More than anything, the war was over hatred. Mistrust breeds hatred, hatred breeds more hatred, and finally the scorpions of hate can no longer be contained, and they are released down in the Carolinas when a rocket traces its night course over the sky at dawn, and the real war is on, city war is over, and 2 vast volunteer armies made up of very young men begin their march to what they call the Glory Road. The Fort Sumter took place on the morning of April the 12th, 1861. there was a group, they called themselves the Cleveland Hibernian Society. Actually, they're formed in 1847, so these are made up of young men who precluded the famine rush to Cleveland. So they had a Hibernian Society. It was a social and military society, and they had their own armory. It was on Rockwell Avenue, and they would show up at St. Patrick's Day parades. There were only 49 of them when the war began, Hibernian Guards. Now I'm going to narrow the focus a little bit more. There's 3 Irish lads who were boyhood friends. They are very close. They all work in a marble factory at 28th under a Welshman by the name of Jones at the corner of what is now 28th and Prospect. Their names are James K. O'Reilly. I know more about him because he was my late wife's great-grandfather, and he's from Longford, from County Longford. The other 2 guys are guys named Thomas Galway and James Butler. They're from Mayo. The 3 guys, one is 25, Galway's only 15, but they're good friends. And they came out of St. Edward's Church. Does anybody remember old St. Edward's Church? It was out there in Woodland, yeah. Okay, and those people call themselves Newburgh Irish. You think, well, no, I think Newburgh is a big holy name, but no, St. Edward's was Newburgh Irish too. They came out of Mass on a Sunday morning, the 14th, and they walked downtown. They strolled downtown, the 3 of them, and they saw a lot of Clevelanders peering into a bulletin board, and they're all trying to see, what does it say? Well, it says that the war is on, Fort Sumter has been bombed, and indeed, Mr. Lincoln is calling for 70,000 volunteers. Well, these 3 guys say, I'm going to do it. Let's go and join up. So they did. They joined up. First, they went to the Cleveland Grays on a Monday morning, and that's on Rockwell, or Boulevard, off Playhouse Square. It still is. Well, Galway writes in a book afterwards, he says, well, the Cleveland Grays were not exactly our kind of the stuff that we're made out of. Well, what that mean? They were Protestant, probably. So they didn't get along with the Grays, so they left. Then they joined the Hibernian Guards, which now gives them 52. Eventually, there's about 100 Clevelanders who joined the Hibernian Guards. Hibernian Guards are then incorporated into a bigger group called the 8th Ohio Volunteer Infantry Regiment. 8th Ohio Regiment. They're going to be very important. About 100 of them are Hibernian Guards. They are called Company B. Well, if you want to know how they joined, I'm taking for the Cleveland leader of that day, a bunch of young recruits, including Butler, O'Reilly, and Galway, meet and are sworn in front of the old stone church on Cleveland's public square. There they bravely kiss their mothers and sisters goodbye, and maybe they're wearing their mom's prayer book or carrying their dad's gold watch, and they're marching off to fight a war. The paper also says that Leland's own Cleveland Regimental Brass Band, as they marched out Woodland to Camp Taylor, 40th and Woodland, Cleveland's own regimental brass band played, quote, appropriate patriotic airs, like The Girl I Left Behind Me and John Brown's Body, When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. Like all wars, it had heroic beginnings. Well, they eventually merged into a vast internecine tragedy which caught up the lives and futures of about 2.5 million Americans who fought one another from Maine to Florida, from Bull Run to Appomattox, each in the confirmed belief that God, Almighty God, was on his side was the correct side. You know, Winston Churchill once called it the last war of gentlemen. Gentlemen, indeed, it was a holiday for butchers, whether it was shot or shell or scalpel. It cost a young nation of less than 20 million people a total of 650,000 dead, more than all of our other wars put together. It is something to brood over. Well, going back to the 3 lads of the Cleveland Irish who went in the Hibernian Guards, they got in the 8th OVI, Ohio Volunteer Infantry, in the first half of